Hi friends, my name's Chess. Welcome to the Scapegoat Club, and in this video I'm going to talk about whether estranged children should in fact expect to be disinherited. It's a big topic, it's an interesting discussion, so stay tuned and we'll go through it. Hi folks, welcome. If you're new here, my name's Chess. I'm a psychotherapist, I'm a relationship coach, and I'm estranged from a challenging family. And I do talk a bit about estrangement on this channel. And in this video, I want to address this common idea that if you're estranged from your family, then you really shouldn't expect to have any inheritance. I think the challenge with this idea is that it's overly simplistic and it overlooks the nuances of the estrangement that happens in family situations. Estrangement isn't always a clear-cut voluntary choice, and inheritance can actually be tied to deeper issues such as power, control, and sometimes harm within families. So I've had lots of comments through various of my videos where people are saying that basically if you walk away from a family, if you decide to estrange and cut off, then you forfeit any right to any inheritance. But I think what that argument ignores are the reasons why people estrange in the first place. And some of the biggest reasons that people estrange are years of emotional abuse or neglect or toxic relationships. For so many people that I've talked to, and for myself as well, it's not a case of abandoning our families. It's about surviving, and it's about preserving our mental and emotional and physical health after we've tried to make what seems like impossible situations work. Research shows again and again that the reason people estrange from families isn't an overnight decision. It isn't a case of they just can't be bothered with the ties of family or looking after an elderly relative. And it's not that there's just one argument or they just have a bone to pick or one grudge with a particular person. The choice of estrangement, if it is a choice in fact, comes from often decades of heart-rending and soul-searching, incredibly hard decision-making after we've tried everything we can, often at great personal cost, to make the relationships work. I also really am personally worried about the idea that inheritance is tied to the idea of staying in a relationship. And whilst hopefully most family relationships are good and supportive, what this does is it actually could act as a financial incentive for people to stay in harmful, toxic, or really abusive relationships. For someone in a toxic family, the fear of being cut off could actually be weaponized and used to control that person to stay in the relationship. And the fear of being cut off could be explicit. We may be told, if you do this, you'll be out of the family, you won't get the inheritance. Or it could be implicit. It might just be that we know on a very deep level what behaviors are acceptable and not acceptable in a family. It's just the idea and that threat can keep us tied into this dysfunctional dynamic. And the truth is as well, and this is well documented in the research, that people who have difficult childhoods or live for years in toxic relationships are way more likely to develop chronic long-term health issues. And having long-term health issues can obviously affect our ability to work and support ourselves financially. So I would really hope that in general as a society, on an individual and on a family level, we can differentiate between people deciding that they're just going to walk away from a relationship because they really can't be bothered, and this idea that life-changing amounts of inheritance could be used as weapons to either control or influence people into staying in neglectful, harmful, abusive relationships. I'm also really disturbed, and this is maybe on a more of a personal level, that the idea of tying inheritance to money somehow monetizes family relationships. The idea that if we stay in a relationship with our family, then we will get inheritance, for me, has a kind of this underlying idea that somehow our relationships for our families are for sale and that there is a price to be paid. I do understand if, say, one sibling were to give up their career to be a caregiver to an elderly parent, for example, that then that sibling would be more entitled to a larger share of inheritance. I can absolutely get behind that argument, not a problem. But in general, I'm really averse to the idea that human relationships are for sale, that they're somehow transactional or there's somehow some kind of business arrangement behind them. Personally, for me, my relationship with my parents and my sister, in fact, was never one that I was willing to pay that higher price for. I would have, and I still would, gladly swap any kind of financial incentive for a relationship with a parent who was genuinely kind and loving and supportive. There is no amount of money in my mind, in my world, that would be anywhere near comparable to what that love would bring and would mean to my life. I also want to address briefly in this video that the estranged person that leaves the family is the black sheep and the problem. The more time I spend working in this space, the more I think that that argument is very, very flawed. And I see that family estrangement could just as easily or may actually be even more likely to be around the family pushing out the person who they see as a threat, but actually it's the family dynamics that are causing the problem. In some situations, in toxic families, and this being the Scapegoat Club, I'm going to talk about a scapegoated person in a family dynamic. What happens in this situation is that a specific person in the family can be targeted as the problem. This can create a family dynamic where the scapegoated person is targeted, they're bullied, and they can actually, over time, basically become pushed out of that family. And of course, the family will interpret that if someone left, then it justifies them being disinherited. However, in these kinds of situations, the estrangement isn't a choice. It's not a choice. It's a consequence of years and years of enduring this unhealthy, unsustainable family dynamic. I also think that inheritance really isn't just about money. It's about status, it's about power, it's about legacy, and it might even be around control. When one person has the ability to control other people, this can incentivize really bad behavior. And this can lead to siblings or other family members exploiting this bad behavior and again pushing another family member out in order to exploit the dynamic and, in the case of inheritance, secure more money for themselves by doing so. I'm grateful for another commenter on my videos highlighting that in some jurisdictions, for example in Sweden, they have different laws around inheritance where children basically cannot be disinherited in the same way that they can in other jurisdictions. From what I've researched, the intent behind this type of legislation is to make estate planning more simplified and to reduce the amount of times that people do contest wills. But what I see a huge benefit of this type of legislation is that it can remove the incidents and the ability for malicious and bad actors to try and manipulate, use malicious behavior to effectively use inheritance as a weapon and split families apart. And for those of you who aren't new to the club, you'll know that I have my own experience in this area. I don't know for sure how my story will end, but when I do look back at certain situations that have happened, I do believe that there are underlying incentives driving certain actions in my family. I think that my estrangement, when I look back on it, hasn't really been a lot about my choice. There have been so many other motives and other people's incentives around it. I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what they are, but I will say that I think that it suits certain family members for me to be out of the picture and to not have a relationship with them. Because financially, that actually changes the picture very much and is very beneficial for some of them. So in general, I really do think that we need to look way, way further beyond a very simplistic narrative around estrangement to start with, that it's not just a black and white, somebody left because they felt like it type of situation. There's a lot of nuance behind it. And so for me, then there has to be a lot of nuance around inheritance. I wonder what would happen, say, if more societies were to follow, say, Sweden's example of changing inheritance laws. Would that potentially change any of the dynamics around estrangement? Would it help protect people against any bad actors in the family? Would it change the way we even think about families? Friends, as always, I love to hear your comments. Please drop me a line below and let me know what you think. Thank you so much for being here, and whatever you're dealing with, whatever brings you here today, please take care, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I will look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care. Bye for now.